So good morning to everyone. It is, I'm Belén Ballesteros, and it's a great pleasure for me to welcome you to this new cycle of seminars, which has been organized by the Equal Opportunities Committee at the ICN2, and which we have entitled LeaderSHE. So just very briefly, LeaderSHE is meant to bring us inspirational talks so that we can hear from the experience from women who have succeeded in reaching leadership positions in their respective professional careers. So the seminars then are intended to promote female leadership among us and break with gender stereotypes by increasing the visibility of women leaders and getting role models. So just saying that our invited speakers will include renowned scientists, which is our field of work, like the case today, where we have Professor María Blasco, which is with no doubt one of the most important scientists in Spain. But we will also have the chance of hearing about other type of professional women. For instance, at the end of May, we will have Carme Ruscalleda, who's a very important chef that has won several Michelin stars and has restaurants worldwide. And at the middle of June, we'll have the talk by Mónica Terribas, who's a very important and very influential journalist. So we'll have the seminar by Professor Blasco in a minute. Just saying that there will be some time for questions at the end of the seminar. So you can write your questions at the question and answers box or at the chat here in the Zoom, and then she will have time to reply to them. So at this point, I will pass the word to Professor Pablo Ordejon, the ICN2 director, who will officially open this new cycle of seminars and will introduce our speaker of today, which I'm sure will give a very interesting and inspirational talk. So thanks all of you for joining us. Bye.
Okay, so good morning. Thank you, Belén. And thank you also to the whole ICN2 Equal Opportunity Committee for coming up with the idea of this LeaderSHE webinar series, and also for the success in gathering such selected group of 3 outstanding speakers for these first 3 sessions. So as Belén was saying, today we have a researcher, María Blasco, but in the next 2 webinars, we will have a famous cook, María Ruscalleda, who is the only female cook in Spain that has 7 Michelin stars, and a reputed journalist, Mónica Terribas, who was Director General of the Catalan TV and a very reputed journalist in Catalonia. So today we have I have the honor and the pleasure to introduce María Blasco for the first LeaderSHE seminar. Hello, María. Thank you very much for accepting and coming to virtually to give this opening seminar at ICN2. Hello. So most of you already know María, maybe for her work, or probably you have seen her already in the media. She's a molecular biologist and biochemist who graduated from the Autónoma University in Madrid and obtained also her PhD there in the US, in Madrid, at the Severo Ochoa Center for Molecular Biology, which is a joint center between CSIC and the Autónoma of Madrid. She got it in '93, and actually we must have coincided many times in the corridors of the Autonomy, because I was working on my PhD at the same time in the same faculty, so probably we have seen each other many times in the corridors. She got the PhD under the supervision of a very prominent Spanish female researcher, Margarita Salas, who was a pioneer in molecular biology in our country and who sadly passed away a couple of years ago. María was a postdoc in New York after finishing her PhD in Madrid. She was in the laboratory of Carol Greider, who was another women scientist who actually shared the Nobel Prize in Medicine later in 2009, together with Elizabeth Blackburn and Jack Sotak, for her discoveries about the telomeres and telomerase. And this is actually the topic where María has followed and where she's a renowned world leader, understanding telomeres and the enzyme telomerase and how they influence very important biological processes like aging or cancer. So Maria has received many important awards. I'm not going to mention them here, but she's also very active in science dissemination and outreach. And as I was saying before, it's not uncommon to see her in the national and international media. She is currently the director of the National Center for Oncologic Research in Madrid, CNIO, and she's also the president of the SOMMA Alliance, the Spanish network of SOMMA, of Severo Ochoa and María de Maeztu Centers of Excellence, of which ICN2 is a member. So Maria, thank you very much again for opening this LeaderSHE series. And I will leave now the virtual floor to you to learn about your views of gender equality as part of responsible research and innovation. So Maria, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Belén and Pablo, for the invitation and the kind introduction. So for me, it's a pleasure and an honor to be the first one to give one of these LeaderSHE lectures, which I think is a great initiative. And as you will see, we have something similar here at the CNIO, and it has been very, very successful. So I will start by sharing my presentation. Can you see it?
Yes, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, so I will be talking about the initiatives we are doing at the CNIO, but before that, I will tell you something about myself, about how I became a scientist, and in particular a woman scientist. So I am from a very small town in Alicante. Well, it's not even a town. It's part of the city of Alicante, but it's in a rural area. So there are like 300 people living there. And I went there to primary school. And well, my family has always supported me in the sense that supported what I wanted to be. And then I went to secondary school in a nearby town. And I remember that my first, let's say, trauma was to try to decide whether I wanted to study science or humanities, because I liked really both very much. And at the end, I decided to do science because I thought it was something more difficult to learn on my own. And I could keep learning about a subject related to humanities. So I don't know if this was right or wrong. But really, I never regretted taking science. So when I had to decide which career to study, I didn't have that very clear at all. I wanted to study something that was that you could apply. I am a person that likes to apply what I discover or what I'm working with. And I thought about studying some engineering, but then we had a talk by Paco Rodríguez Valera, that is a scientist working now at the University of Elche, but before he was at the University of Alicante. And he came to this secondary school to talk about molecular biology and biochemistry, and I have never heard of it. So after his talk, that he was telling us about cutting and pasting genes and how this would be the tool really to study how life works, to study the origin of diseases, etc. So for me, it was fascinating, and I decided really that I wanted to be a molecular biologist. And I asked him, where can I go to study this? And he told me, well, you must go to the Autonomous University of Madrid, because there is the Center of Molecular Biology. Also in Salamanca, there are some researchers working in molecular biology. And that was my objective since then. Actually, I forgot who this teacher was, and it was not until recently that I discovered who this person was. And I thank him personally for this. And I discovered that he was the mentor, the thesis director of Francis Mojica, that you may know him because while Mojica was working with Paco Rodríguez Valera, he discovered the CRISPR sequences that that originated the CRISPR-Cas system that was awarded with the Nobel Prize recently to two women scientists. So I think I had a good teacher, and that's why I could really understand that I wanted really to be a molecular biologist. So I asked to go to work to the Autonomous University in Madrid, and it was denied because back then we were many of us. I'm part of the baby boom generation, and there were too many people at the Universidad Autónoma de Madrid, and I had to go and study in Valencia. and I studied there biology, but as soon as I could, I moved to the Universidad Autónoma de Madrid. And the way I had to do this was to really contact. I think I took the telephone list, really, and I contacted the heads of the molecular biology department, and they were so kind to receive me one day in Madrid, summer day in Madrid. And that day I met Margarita Salas, and I met other researchers at the Center of Molecular Biology. And the person that welcomed me there, José Miguel Hermoso was his name. He was the teaching molecular biology in the Autonomous University of Madrid. He told me that Margarita Salas was the best researcher at the Molecular Biology Center in Madrid. So, I back then I knew I wanted to study either cancer or aging. I wanted to work in these subjects because I thought there were the cause of many deaths and disease. And don't ask me why, but I wanted to study either cancer or aging. And he told me that Margarita Salas was not working with cancer or aging, that she was working with small bacteriophages, but that she really was one of the best groups there. And if I learned with her to be a molecular biology, that would open the doors then to go whenever I wanted to specialize in cancer or aging. And I was lucky that Margarita was looking for students, and I interviewed with her. And I remember that, well, she only asked me two things. She asked me whether I like to work with my hands, because science was something that you had to be, actually working with in a lab, which is like a kitchen in a way. And she asked me whether I was ready to go wherever it took to develop my career, to go abroad, to go to the US, to go to the UK, and follow the scientific career. And I said yes to both things, not knowing very much actually what it meant at the beginning, but well, she said okay, and that same afternoon she gave me some papers, and I started really, at that point, I think I started to become a scientist. And I started working while I was studying at the university at the laboratory of Margarita Salas. So I was already carrying scientific projects before finishing the career, and I did there my PhD. Then I didn't select specifically Margarita because she was a woman. I selected her because I was told she was the best group at the Molecular Biology Center in Madrid. And actually I had a great training with her, and she has been always in touch with all her students, and we had a great relationship. While I was with her, I had to decide where to do my postdoc, and I didn't know. I knew I wanted to go to Cold Spring Harbor in New York, because that was like the place where many of the molecular biology initial important experiments were done, and I really loved molecular biology. And there I remember that a colleague told me that he that he went to a meeting, DNA replication meeting, and he met this very young woman. Her name was Carol Greider. She started her group in Cold Spring Harbor without doing a postdoc. So she had discovered this new enzyme called telomerase when she was a PhD student. And I think I can put this slide. So this was my PhD with Margarita. And then I was being told about this scientist, Carol Greider. The president of the director or now president or ex-president of Cold Spring Harbor was Jim Watson. He was one of the discoverers of the structure of the DNA. And Watson really was fascinated by the subject of telomeres, because at Cold Spring Harbor was also working Barbara McClintock, that she was one of the discoverers of the telomeres. And Watson found about the discovery of this enzyme called telomerase that was able to elongate the telomeres. And he hired Carol while she was a PhD student. So she never did a postdoc. She started her own group. And this colleague, saw her give a talk. She was the only person in her lab. She was working, and he told me, "You must go to work with this woman, with Carol Greider, because she's very energetic, and she has discovered something that has a lot of potential. And that it was actually related to my work with Margarita Salas, because with Margarita Salas, I was studying the replication of the ends of the genome, of the viral genome, that in order to solve the replication of the ends, it had a terminal protein bound to the DNA. And Carol was working with the replication of the ends of the chromosomes, the vertebrate chromosomes, which are the telomeres. So I thought it was a great connection, and should be a very, very interesting jump, because telomeres and telomeres were also proposed to be important back then for cancer and aging, even though nobody had ever described the connection. But because these structures were important for the cell division, it was thought that this would be important for cancer and aging. So I wrote Carol, and she immediately replied by letter 1 month after, and invited me to go to see her. And she really liked my work with Margarita, and I was accepted in her lab. Again, I was working with another woman, but it's not that I have decided I wanted to work with a woman, but the discovery of telomeres was done by two women, by Carol Grader and by Elizabeth Blackburn. That was the thesis director of Carol when she was doing the PhD with her. So I was again in a women leader scientific environment with Carol, and also of course with close connection with Liz Blackburn, that has been also a great mentor. So while I was with Carol, I was lucky. I published top papers, and it was relatively easy to get one of the positions at the CSIC, and I came back to Spain already with a position at the CSIC as an independent researcher, and I started my own lab in the Centro Nacional de Biotecnología in 1997. After a few years there, a new center was being created in Madrid, the Spanish National Cancer Research Center, the CNIO. And the director there, Mariano Barbacid, asked me to go to work there. And he also offered to become the director of one of the programs at the center, the molecular oncology program. And basically the job there was to recruit new group leaders to form this program that would be the flagship program of the CNIO. And well, I said, yeah, okay, I will move to the CNIO. This was a center with a lot of money and a more flexible environment than the CSIC. And I came to the CNIO, and later on I became the vice director of basic research, so basically all the basic research at the center. And later when Mariano stepped down from the CNIO as director, I became the director. I had already been a vice director. I have been working, already involved in hiring, creating new programs, etc. So for me, it was a natural step to become the director. But I wanted to say that, highlight this, that my mentors have been women. I also had a great mentor in Ginger Sekian. Ginger Sekian, she's at Princeton University, and together with Blackburn, they were pioneers studying the telomeres in the lab of Joe Goll. Joe Goll was a scientist working with chromosomes, and actually when Liz Blackburn went to work with Joe Goll, her project was to sequence the telomeres. So Blackburn had been working with Sanger, and as you know, at that time, the thing to do was to sequence DNA. And her job was to sequence the ends of chromosomes, to sequence the telomeres. And when she sequenced the telomeres, she found that the telomeres were very, very boring, apparently. So we just repeated sequences. There was no genetic information there. And actually, the sequence of the telomeres was published not in a very top journal. I think it was Molecular Biology or Cell Biology, Molecular and Cellular Biology or something like that. But Liz was convinced that this was very important, and so was Ginger Sekian, that was also working with Joe Gall. And then they both decided to understand which was the mechanism maintaining the telomeres, or important for telomere maintenance. Alice thought it should be an enzyme that would elongate the telomeres, and Ginger thought it could be a recombination between telomeric sequences, which are repeated sequences. Both were right, but the more flashy discovery was that of Liz and Grader. That was the discovery of telomerase. And for that, they received the Nobel Prize on medicine or physiology because they predicted and they found this activity that was able to elongate telomeres. So I was working with Carol, and there I cloned the mouse telomerase gene, and back to back with the cloning of the human gene. And this allowed to generate the first mice deficient for telomerase. And we could demonstrate the role of telomerase and telomeres in cancer and aging. And so from there on, I have studied the role of telomeres and telomerase in cancer and aging. So I'm also a mother. So in 2007, my son was born, and he doesn't want to be a scientist, but I have to say that being a group leader, I was even the vice director of the CNIO when I had my son. It has not been an impediment to be able to combine my work life with my family life, and this is because of the flexibility that you have if you are the boss, basically. So I thought, well, this should be something that should be put in place. Not just that you could be flexible and your partner is flexible because also he's a scientist, but actually we should structure it in the center this as something that anybody could feel very at ease in combining the work life at the lab and the family life. And when I became the director, so this was one of my goals. But before that, just to say that there is a lot of work ahead, and I think the most important numbers, I mean, I'm not going to review all the numbers that there are in the science world. I mean, there is a recent report by the Ministry of Science on the numbers of women and men in different careers, in different levels of science. But to me, the more relevant number is this of the World Economic Forum, that there is still 250 years to go to achieve real equality at the economic level between men and women. So this means that a girl that is born today will not live in this equal world. So because equality will be reached in 2277, but this may be more than that, because actually we are not cutting these years, but this is increasing. So between 2019 and 2010, 55 more years have to be added. So we are not really advancing in gender equality at the economic level, which I think is one of the key issues. And then you have things like the COVID pandemic that is not is a clear example that, again, are the women the ones that are suffering more any crisis, economic crisis, epidemiological crisis, like the COVID-19. And this was taken from the Scientific American, but there are many papers in Nature and other journals where, again, the women scientists have been more affected by the pandemic because of the double job of taking care of the family and taking care of also the work. So this is something that well, is something to worry about, and I think it means that we have to advance a lot. So in 2012, a year after I became the director, we initiated the Women and Science Office at CNIO, or WISE office, with the goal of fight gender stereotypes, which I think is one of the reasons why there is not this equality between men and women, because there are still many stereotypes, and these stereotypes are specifically damaging the possibilities of women to develop their careers, also in science, not only in science, I'm not going to cite all these papers by the John and Jennifer paper on evaluating the CV, or the science paper saying that these stereotypes start very early, as soon as 6-7 years of age. The reality is that this is there, and we have to fight them. And this was one of the goals of this office. And this meant make structural changes at the CNIO. So this meant to make really easy things easy for our workers. So just to show the importance of this for the CNIO, is in our web page, is among the top activities of the center. So it's part of our identity. So this is not a minor issue in the center, but it's an important issue in at the CNIO, women and science, right? So the office is all formed by volunteers at the CNIO. It has the support of the direction. So we have, I'm involved since the beginning. And we have a live work group and seminars and events group. And the work-life balance group has been working with the Works Council to make a number of changes in the CNIO that I think have make easier the life of men and women scientists that have to responsibilities both at work and both at home with the family. So we have a continuous working schedule that before it wasn't like that. We have a flexible working schedule, so you can start your work at the CNIO between 7 and 10, and from there on, you have your working hours according to your needs. And the times for CNIO meetings have to be inclusive, so we cannot put a meeting after 4 p.m. because there will be men and women that have to go to pick up the kids, and they will be excluded. The distinguished seminars and the CNIO conferences, and we have the so-called CNIO Frontiers meetings, which are very prestigious, and now we have 50% of the speakers should be women. Even before I became the director, as vice director, I managed to get the former director to agree that in the career development plan of junior group leaders that are evaluated 5 years after the starting, we should add 1 year extra per kid, and this is something that I think is very good, and we have applied several times. The kindergarten at the CNIO is partially paid by the CNIO, not fully, but paid at a high percentage by the CNIO until 3 years of age. We have a lactancy room at CNIO. We had a teleworking, remote working politics before the pandemic, so before the COVID. Already the CNIO, one could apply for 2 days per week of telework or remote working. To be able to balance the work and family life, and of course we have an ethical code that includes gender issues and issues like harassment, and actually we had several cases being dealt in this in the context of this ethical code, and even one person that was fired from the CNIO. And then we have also an equality plan, of course. These are some of our seminar posters. You can see all the arrows are women scientists. So we are doing this, and it's fantastic because there is more diversity. It's not always the same. It's really top women that we can get to know them. Some of the consequences of this, I think the most important one has been the flexible working hours. This has reduced the number of women and men, specifically women, that take that reduce their working hours. So after the implementation of the flexible working schedule at CNIO, we have much less employees that have a reduced working schedule, and this is very good because they can maintain their salary. They don't have to cut their salaries. So I would say, in my experience, that this is one of the most important measures we have taken to have really a flexible working hour schedule at the CNIO. And regarding the CNIO Women and Science Office seminars, I think this has been an important initiative. I must say that at the beginning, when we started, there was not a lot of people coming to these seminars in the center. They are not compulsory. People come voluntarily. And at the beginning, it was very difficult to get PIs, specifically, and specifically men PIs to come. And if the PI doesn't come, the students in the labs don't come either, because the PI is not giving, let's say, example coming to these seminars. So it has taken a few years for this to be something considered attractive, appealing, that everybody comes. And in that regard, I think it's important to be patient and to be persistent with this initiative. So these seminars are given by women that have some men also. Here you have José Luis Rodríguez Zapatero. He was president of Spain, and he's very feminist, and I think he has done some important things in this regard in our country. But we have women from many different fields, and we invite to these seminars to secondary school students, because I think it's very important that the boys and girls that are at the secondary school, and we could even start earlier, but we started with secondary school, is important that they can break these stereotypes, because these stereotypes are really very, very bad for both, for men and women. And we always invite students from secondary schools to attend these seminars. Here we had Edurne Pasaban, which was the first woman to climb the 8,000 meter or taller mountains on Earth. Here we had María Teresa Fernández de la Vega, Vice President of Spain, Victoria Camps, philosopher, Luz Casal, a singer, Rosa Montero, writer, again, the secondary school students, a poet, Elvira Sastre. This was already during the pandemics. We had we keep the activities by Zoom. Here we had José Luis Rodríguez Zapatero. That I recommend him. He gives fantastic talks. Here we had Sara Jiménez, a congresswoman. She's fighting for the rights of the Gypsy ethnics. So it's also very interesting diversity from the point of view of different cultures. Pepa Bueno, who's a reporter, another vice president of Spain, Soraya Sáenz de Santa Maria. Every March 8th, we have a special event. In this case, for instance, we represented Una Habitación Propia, or one, the title in English doesn't come now, One Owns Room, I think, which was actually the CNIO represented this adaptation before the Teatro Español, and it's great because if you read this book this essay by Virginia Woolf, it's really about a woman writer that goes to Oxbridge, which is like a mixture between Oxford and Cambridge. She goes there and visits some colleges there, and she reflects on the difference between the men's colleges and the women's college. The women's college don't have money, they have a much austere life, and she's talking about the importance of money to really to be able to be independent and to be able to progress. For us, it was important that this was represented at a research center, because Virginia Woolf is talking about university. I mean, fictitious university, but it's a university and different colleges. So we also had this year, we had Mary Baird, that as you know is professor of classics at the University of Cambridge, and we were able to do this together with the Instituto de Empresa and the British Embassy, and it's also great speaker. We organize exhibits. We have been the place where this initiative called STEM Talent Girl is to foster careers in engineering and in general in STEM. And the CNIO was the site in Madrid, and we had seminars by the CEO from big corporations like Siemens, IBM. These are the different women, mainly engineers, that are leading big companies in Spain, and they can inspire, you know. Again, the people that are coming to the seminars are mainly secondary school girls. And we, of course, participate in different initiatives, and we have different training for primary and secondary school students where we take gender balance very, very much as an important thing, and we participate in different campaigns. We have also an agreement with the Mujeres for Africa Foundation, and we receive every year one woman leader from Africa, from some African countries, to do here a sabbatical. And well, we have done many initiatives in which we really take in consideration the visibility of women or girls. This was an initiative where the sons and daughters of scientists at the CNIO were interviewing the fathers or mothers, and always everything that is done at the CNIO, it has to be 50-50. So I'm very strict with that. And one of the initiatives, for instance, is called CNIO Arte, and it's a very visible initiative. Every year we invite an artist to generate a new art piece inspiring the work of a scientist, and here we're also very careful. There is a gender balance in the artists and in the scientists that are being invited to this. And we had Eva Lotz, Chema Madoz as artist, Carmen Calvo was in 2000 was the former initiative with Juan Luis Arzuaga, and this year we have Sarah Teichmann and the big data in science. She's working in the Sanger Institute. She's an EMBO gold medal scientist of Europe, and Daniel Canogar as the artist. So this will be presented every year. We present this in ARCO. This year will be in July. It has been modified the date. So with this, I wanted to give you an overview. I think I will stop here. An overview of the things we are doing at the CNIO, of the importance of having this as part of the DNA of an institution. And I think if the message is persistent and consistent, at the end, you know, the center becomes very sensible to these issues. And I would say the CNIO is a feminist institution right now, and this is thanks to really to have this as an important activity of the center. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Maria, for this very nice talk. I think one important message is what you said last, this persistence. I was very impressed, very badly impressed by the figures you showed about these 200 and something years, which are increased to 55 more. It's really, it's really bad.
It keeps increasing.
Yeah, so it's bad in the beginning, but it's getting worse. So it's very important to do things in the long term, but to be persistent and to insist constantly. So I think I'm going to read some of the questions that were posted in the chat. I think the first one was one in the question and answers. It says, what if, so if there is a Marvel comic series exploring parallel realities where one key feature of the Marvel character background story has been changed. So the question is, what if telomeres had been discovered by a man? Do you think your career would have been any different?
Probably. I think, well, this is something interesting because the discoverers were two women, and even the telomeres were discovered by a woman, also by McClintock, and also by Herman Miller, but one of them was a woman. I think this has invited many other women to be in the field, and now the telomere field is a women's field. Many of the group leaders are women, so there was a time where men also jumped in, especially when telomerase was found to be hyperactivated in cancer. Then all the big cancer guys came to the telomere field, but now they left because I think there are more interesting things for them. And the telomere field continues to be a women leaders field, and I think this is this indicates that it's very important to have women role models for women, and this is a chain that helps other women. So that's why I always say that I think I recommend women scientists that have to choose where to do a postdoc or a PhD to consider that, to go with a PI. I'm not saying that guys are bad PIs. Please don't understand that, but that is also something to consider. Mm-hmm. Even though I never considered that, really, in my case, it was I wanted to work. I went to work with the person that everybody told me that was the best group, the Centro de Biología Molecular. In the case of Carol Grader, the field was really fascinating. It was something new, and I had an opportunity there to make some contributions.
Mm-hmm. Okay, there are a couple of more questions. So the first one is, hello, Maria, could you tell us more about the harassment measures of CNIO?
Yeah, we have a committee, which is the part of the scientific committee, on that whenever there is, people at the CNIO can make, can bring to the attention of this committee any situation that could have been harassment or whatever that anybody feels that is not right. And this is studied. So an investigation is started internally, and then measures are taken. And the majority of the cases, but many of the cases we had are related to sexual harassment, or not exactly sexual harassment. Sometimes it's the discriminatory treatment or something like that. And I think it's good because having this Women and Science office and having this is a way to tell the workers here, that you can denounce. You have to be comfortable working at the CNIO, and if you are not comfortable, you have ways to go to try to fix that.
Yeah, I think it's very important to set up a culture about this, not only procedures but a culture, so people know that this is something which they can bring up. Yeah, and it's common wisdom. Let's say you don't have to go.
It's amazing. I think before, this center, I imagine many other centers, there were, there is this micro machismo or micro that you can hear in every meeting, and this has disappeared. The CNIO now is difficult to, because it's part of our culture, but before it was very common, like everywhere else.
Mm-hmm. Okay, next question is, have you ever suffered imposter syndrome? How do you recommend to cope with it?
Well, actually, I didn't know what it was, but I was in a Max Planck advisory board in Germany, and I remember I shared the taxi with two women scientists from the US, and they told me, "So, Maria, do you have imposter syndrome?" And I said, "What is that?" Because I didn't know. And they explained to me that this was when you have a position in which usually not many women have been taking this position before, and you're one of the first women there, and you are surrounded maybe by men that are maybe below you. And as is my case, because at the CNIO, we have more and more women group leaders, but the majority are still men. So even though I never heard about it, when they explained it to me, I said, yes, of course. Who hasn't? If you arrive to a position where you have been one of the, in my case, I was the first woman director of the CNIO. The CNIO is not a very old institution, but still, it's a very visible institution. And yes, you sometimes hear some things, and it's true that because there are less women in the top, it's more easy to feel this imposter syndrome. As Sheryl Sandberg wrote in her book Lean In, she's one of she's the CEO, I think, the chief operating officer of Facebook, and she wrote that only when there is 50% of women in power positions, there will be a real equality between men and women, and I think she's right. Until then, any woman that is on top will feel probably this pressure.
Yeah. Okay, another question by Belen. I read some years ago, you would have said that you had never felt gender inequalities, but that this perception changed once you started getting to higher positions. Is that the case? And can you comment on it?
Yes, this is absolutely the case. I mean, because maybe I was in a bubble, because I was first with Margarita Salas, she's very feminist, then with Carol Grader, she was super feminist, fighting for, I remember in College Spring Harbor, she was fighting for a kindergarten, which in the US is not very common. So I was very protected, let's say, and I never had any feeling of gender inequality. I think science in general is a very safe space for women because everything is based on merit. So while you are advancing in your career, you have the feeling that you have equal opportunities because decisions are made based on merits up to a point where there are appointments. You may be appointed program director, you may be appointed a director of a center, and so on. And there is things start to become a little bit more less equal. And in my case, yeah, I had something happen suddenly when I became the director. Some people started challenging me in a very naive way. Sometimes I had the feeling I was in a kindergarten and I had to deal with my kids or something like that. I mean, it was something that now it doesn't happen, but it took a while for people, especially PIs, to start behaving in a different way.
The last question in the list is, you mentioned at the beginning that hands-on work is important. At what point of the advance of your career did you stop getting in the lab? How do you lead science from that distance? How do you prioritize or balance your time between science and management? That's a very interesting question.
Yeah, I stopped working in the lab way before I became the CNIO director. I think when I came back from the US and I started my own lab, I think during the first year I was still doing experiments. I was the technician of my of my students. But after I trained, technicians and senior people in my lab, I could stop doing that and do other things that are also very important and are a lot of work, like writing grants, writing papers, going to meetings, thinking about projects. There is a lot of work also to do in the outside of the lab and in the office when you are a scientist. And I think is a fascinating work. And I think this is the goal of the scientific career. While you are working in the lab, you are training. Mm-hmm. But really, when you direct your own lab, when you really are being a scientist. And I think this is something that I was already doing before the director. Now, as a director, of course, I have two important duties: my lab and the center. And the center comes first. But luckily, I have very good senior people in my lab, so that are helping me a lot.
All right. I don't think there are more questions. If anybody wants to say anything or write all the questions. So if not, thank you, Maria, again. It was really very nice and very, I learned a lot from your talk. I learned many interesting lessons. The first one, I was very impressed by how you started and how you got to the Autónoma of Madrid. So it's very important not to be shy in this field, in this, everyone in your life, but in science, it's very important not to be shy and talk to the people who really have the experience and the knowledge and can bring you to important places. So I think that's a very important message for everybody, men and women.
Yeah, absolutely. That's very important. It's something that sometimes is not very well known, but it still works like that. When you want to go to work with someone, you write an email or write a letter, and that's how it all starts. So you have to be really forward. You have to follow your dreams.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for attending this first LeaderSHE seminar. And I look forward to see you in a few weeks. Thank you, Maria. Thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation.
Okay.
Good luck with the initiative. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Thank you.